Please welcome to the stage the chair of the AAAS Board of Directors, Joseph Francisco.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 192nd meeting of AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. It is great to see all of you here in Phoenix, especially knowing that many of you have come from much colder places, like Philadelphia. It's wonderful to see many new and familiar faces in this audience, and being together over the next couple of days is unique and unparalleled an opportunity, and we hope that each of you makes the most of your time to reconnect with existing friends and colleagues and make connections with new ones and discover the promise of interdisciplinary collaboration for advancing scientific endeavor and our collective humanity. The development of this multidisciplinary program you will enjoy over the next 2 days has been guided by AAAS President Theresa Maldonado and the truly dedicated annual meeting program committee that works year-round. Many thanks to Theresa. Theresa, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I also want to thank the committee for their excellent work year-round in putting this program together. We're gathering thanks to support all of you, along with a coalition of wonderful sponsors and partners, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize them tonight. Of course, you know this 2026 annual meeting host university is the Arizona State University, from whom we will hear in just a moment. I also want to recognize Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Public Policy at Georgia Tech, George Washington University, Florida International University, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, the Science Philanthropy Alliance, UL Research Institutes, Digital Science Research Solutions, KFUPM, Morgan State University, and last but not least, the American Institute of Physics. And I want to really extend our deepest thanks to these organizations for their generous support of this year's annual meeting. Now, before we begin the program, I'd like to recognize members of the American Junior Academy of Sciences. The American Junior Academy of Sciences is the only national honor society recognizing America's high school students for outstanding scientific research, and the winners are chosen from statewide competitions, are nominated to represent their states at the National American Junior Academy of Science Convention, which is held in conjunction with our annual meeting. So I hope you will take time to meet and encourage these young scholars. And at this time, I would like to ask all American Junior Academy of Science students to stand and be recognized. Now, if I was you, I would try to get some of their autographs, because I'm sure there will be some Nobel laureates among them soon. Now, we are in for a special treat tonight, and I'm pleased to introduce a traditional hoop dancing performance by Yellowbird Productions. Internationally renowned Yellowbird Productions, under the direction of Ken Duncan, a member of the San Carlos Apache tribe, and Doreen Duncan, a member of the Mandan Hidatsa Arikara Nation of North Dakota, specializes in cultural presentations that celebrate the unique spirit of the American Indian. For the past 30 years, Yellowbird has curated a unique repertoire of songs, dances, stories, and dialogue that entertains and educates audiences of all ages. Yellowbird is a professional family dance company based right here in Phoenix. The group boasts many national dance champions and has been featured performers for many prestigious audiences and institutions. Tonight we'll experience a kaleidoscope of dances, songs, and stories introducing us to the essence and passionate spirit of the Native American culture. And I really want to invite you to experience the energy of the Circle of Life dance as the dancer creates images of desert life, the butterfly, the hawk, and beautiful desert flowers. I welcome Yellow Dance.
Dagut shike. Skana nikura bigusu gonse. Skana nikura bigusu Kevin Dakota Duncan ishli. Sanish Panishti. Saikene Danasha. Hello everybody. My name is Kevin Dakota Duncan. My Arikara name is Skana nikura bigusu, which translates to only hawk. I introduce myself in the language of my Shichene, my Apache grandmother. I'm so thankful to be here tonight, and I hope you enjoy what we have in store for you. The first presentation we're going to do is a dance that you heard of just a little bit ago called the hoop dance. But it is a dance about the story of the circle of life. As Native people, we believe that everything in creation is connected. We believe how we treat everything in creation is connected. We believe how we treat the plant life is always going to come back to us. We believe how we treat our friends and our family and even people who we do not see eye to eye with. If we have bad words or bad thoughts, it's always going to come back to us in the great circle of life. So we always need to live in a good way. This dance, you'll see different formations being made, and it is done out of respect for everything that Creator has blessed us with. I will share with you my style of the dance at this moment, and later on you will see another style at the end of the performance. Ahia Gajodaleth. Thank you. May peace be with you.
Thank you very much. The beautiful city, Phoenix, is located on the ancestral homelands of the Pima and the Maricopa. The Pimas call themselves Acumula Autumn, which means river people. The Maricopa are known as Peephosh. There are many different tribes all across in our great nation, and right here in our great state of Arizona, there's representation from 22 different Native American tribes. We'd like to share with you at this time powwow style of dancing. These are gatherings when many different tribes come together to share our beautiful culture. Please welcome my son, Talon Reed Duncan, and also my other son, Kenny Jr., and myself as we share with you this beautiful style of dancing.
Thank you for that applause. It's always really great to see our life giver out here, because long ago she took some time off from dancing and she made sure that we were always prepared. She made sure that we had the right regalia, we had the correct hoops, that we were always practicing. And once we all became adults, she came back into the circle. So it's really good to see our mother here continuing the circle of life through that dance. The next dance that we're going to have is going to be done by my two youngest brothers. It's going to be the Circle of Life dance. And this dance is always a really good storytelling dance because every hoop dancer has their own style. They have the different amount of hoops, they have different regalia, but each one has a style that represents who they are. And so you're going to see my brother Jonathan Sky. His Arikara name is Swift Horse Coming. And then you're going to see our youngest brother, the tallest one, Talon Reed Duncan. His Arikara name is Lightning Crow Dancer. And as Apache people, you might have heard of us before being really fierce warriors. And as warrior people, the way we choose the next war chief was always whoever in the group of the young boys was the best listener, because we did not have to tell them instruction twice. And my two younger brothers really are a true testament to that teaching, because anything improvement that they need me to help them, or our older brothers or our father, they write it down in their head and they perform it each time they're out here. So again, if you like what you see, if you enjoy this dance, go ahead and give my two younger brothers a round of applause. Jonathan Sky Duncan. And also Talon Reed Duncan. with their style of the hoop dance. Again, hiya, thank you.
Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. Welcome to the American Association for the Advancement of Science's annual meeting. Thank you to everyone who made this event possible, and thank you to Arizona State University for hosting. ASU is a national leader in research, innovation, and education. Phoenix is proud to be a partner in their work. ASU's impact is especially clear in engineering, with more than 30,000 students currently in the engineering pipeline. That talent fuels innovation, strengthens our workforce, and drives economic growth across our region. The City of Phoenix is proud to partner with ASU on the new ASU Health building in downtown Phoenix. ASU Health will include a medical school where our graduates also get a master's in engineering. We hope this will drive the wearables, AI, tech of the future, and are really excited to have it in our community. Our voters are pro-science voters, so we went to our voters and asked them to issue bond funding to help ASU Health grow in downtown Phoenix, and our voters enthusiastically said yes. For me, with a background, an environmental degree, a science degree, and voters that support science in the way they do, I feel like we have an incredible future here in Phoenix. Our partnerships with our universities have helped grow our employment base, including the $165 billion investment from Taiwan Semiconductor that's creating an incredible pathway to middle class for so many of our residents and helping us make the most advanced chips in the nation. We know with our partnerships with the academia, the future is bright for Phoenix and for our country, and we're so excited to have you in our community for this very important convening. Have a great time.
Please welcome to the stage AAAS CEO and executive publisher of the Science family of journals, Sudip Parikh.
Good evening, everybody. Come on, good evening, everybody. Yeah, after that performance, how can you not have energy? I want to thank Mayor Kate Gallego for that warm introduction and welcome to Phoenix. And I have a lot more to say tonight, but first, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Arizona State University. And I want to introduce a friend and a collaborator and one of the most impactful leaders of our community, President Michael Crow. Now, just about a year ago, the AAAS and Arizona State University launched the AAAS ASU Collaborative, a first-of-its-kind partnership between a scientific society and an institute of higher education. This unique collaboration is built on a shared commitment to advancing science that delivers tangible public value and to ensuring both broad participation in and engagement with science and engineering. Now, just last night, we were thrilled to gather just a few blocks from here at ASU's Phoenix campus, which you can walk to from here, and celebrate the first ever ASU Science Prize for Transformational Research. And that recognizes new methods to identify problems and produce findings with clear impacts on public policy. Because what is the measure? What is the measure of science? Is it not to impact our communities around us? But first, I want to turn to Michael. Now, Michael Crow is an educator. He's a knowledge enterprise architect. He's a science and technology policy scholar, and he's a higher education leader. And he became the 16th president of Arizona State University in 2002. And he has led ASU's rapid and groundbreaking transformation into one of the world's best public research universities. As a model new American university, ASU simultaneously demonstrates comprehensive excellence, inclusivity representative of the ethnic and socioeconomic spectrum of the United States, and consequential societal impact. Now, I've got a whole list of extraordinary achievements that Michael has accomplished, but I'm going to, at his behest, I'm going to skip a little bit over that. And what I'm going to say is this. The one achievement I am going to mention, he is a fellow of the AAAS. He is. But let me say this. When you think about folks who take an idea, and many of us have ideas that are a dime a dozen, but you take an idea and you start to put flesh to it, when you start to put ideas into action, when you start to manifest your imagination on the streets of a city, that makes a huge difference. And I've watched as Arizona State University has helped transform Phoenix into a powerhouse of science and technology in this country and in the world, all for the better. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Michael Crow. Of course.
Thank you, Sudip. And he didn't tell you that you can't see anyone from up here, so. Well, first, what I want to do is really just welcome you to this unusual place. This is the 48th state in the Union, so it's the last state in the lower 48, and it's really important to remember that because when you're the last in, that means you don't have any rules, you don't have any boundary conditions, you don't have any guidelines. Everybody came here except for our Native American communities who have been here forever. You take all of that and everyone coming here from everywhere else and you just sort of run this blender in a certain kind of way. You figure out how to build air conditioning, which allows people to live in this county, and then all of a sudden you have this new place, this new democratic laboratory. As they say, the states, the laboratories of democracy. And so one of the things that really drives me here in Arizona is, there's not a lot of focus on, what's going on in Washington or what's going on in Chicago or New York or why did they do it this way or you should build a university in a particular way. Instead, here, this is called a plebiscite state. In a plebiscite state, the people can speak whenever they want, for whatever they want, over any topic that they want. And we were an old teachers' college that got going back in the days of Arizona as a territory. And then lo and behold, around 1960, the people of the state of Arizona decided that there should be more than one university in Arizona. So why don't we form another one? We'll just vote it into existence. Well, I don't know what additional motivation for an egalitarian university, a democratically focused university, a university focused on the people and its interests than you could possibly imagine, then you're voted into existence by the people. Well, here in Arizona, we have a center called the Center for the Future of Arizona, which listens very closely to the people, not what they say through their political expressions only, not what they say through their answering some question about what group they're a part of, not some group identity test, but what do they want? What do they want Arizona to be? And there's 7 or 8 things that they've identified where the vast majority, more than 70%, have an agreement of what they want. And it's different than anything that you would imagine from the national media, from the polling data. They want a pathway to educational success for their children. They want a sustainable environment. They want blue skies. They want clean water. They want clean air. They want affordable health care. They want justice equally delivered throughout the people. And this is overwhelming. So we've taken this place and decided that we would build, as was suggested in the introduction, a new kind of university. Not better than other universities, we just need more different types of universities as the democracy evolves. And so we built a university that's built around 3 core principles. One, that we will measure our success based on who we include versus who we exclude and how they succeed. And we use the word inclusion in our charter. That means, for instance, Native American students at Arizona State University are in the thousands. Thousands, for instance. The second part of our charter is that we are an institution focused on doing research, yes, earning academic medals, yes, contributing to the stock of knowledge, yes, doing all of those things, but are we doing it for public value in a way that can be measured? Because if you can't measure the public value of the research, if you can't listen to the heartbeat of the people in a democracy about scholarship and science and research, then you're disconnected. So it's research of public value. And the last thing that we do is that we try very hard to take responsibility. We try very hard to take responsibility. And I'm coming to this in a second. So long ago, 80 years ago, the scientific community did a deal with the national government of the United States in which they said, we will do X, Y, and Z if you give us lots of money and leave us alone. Okay, well, what about if you don't do those things? What if those things aren't achieved? So at ASU, we've said in our charter that we will take responsibility for the economic outcome of the region, the health outcome, the learning outcome, the educational outcome, not solely, but you can't run a university that produces most of the teachers and half the principals and most of the superintendents and all the math teachers and all the elected officials and so forth and say, well, it's someone else's problem that K-12 is not working. It's not someone else's problem. It's our problem. It's someone else's problem if all of a sudden we build these new technologies and 40% of the people are feeling insecure about the future. That's also our problem. So this 3-part charter is something that's been not only permitted to be grown here in Arizona, but desired. America is this place where the story is yet to be told. We're not even past the second chapter of the first volume of what I hope will be a 50-volume, 10-chapter per volume book as we work to perfect the ideals of this democracy. Now let me come back to that. I wrote down this morning a little bit about, because I have to say something about this. We've got a problem in science in the United States. We're feeling tremendous evolutionary stress, and we can't find our way through it because something's happened to us along the way. So let's look at some of the evolutionary steps that science has been through. So obviously, originally, we were filled as human beings with traditional knowledge systems, deeply embedded in communities and clans and groups in which knowledge was transferred by music and art and teaching day in and day out, and the scientific understanding about how to do this or how to do that, or how to build this or how to build that, or how to engineer a kayak, and without calculus, if you can imagine. That was traditional knowledge in which those scientists and those technologies that existed at the time in a pre-science era were deeply embedded in the community and could communicate. And then second, we had these ancient scientists who were pre-Socratic, before Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and they began this separation through their theories and their focus on magic and their mathematical expressions, which many, many people couldn't understand. We moved from that to just right after Socrates, what I call the emergence of natural philosophy, which is where a lot of us were grounded and graded and basically even influenced by this phase of science, which there were the pillars of science and the pillars of European knowledge. But we also began to see further and further separation, further and further language disillusion, where regular people couldn't understand what Ptolemy or Copernicus were saying. And there was conflict and issues and so forth. And that ultimately led to modern science in the last 400 years, which has been this most unbelievable enlightenment for our species, just beyond belief. So much so that 80 years ago, that modern science in the United States at the end of World War II and during World War II was decided, let's put this to work at a scale like human beings have never even imagined. Let's figure out how to make science hyper, the notion of hyper-modern science. Millions of scientists, tens of thousands of research groups, billions of dollars a year going into science. And what did we get from that? We got unbelievable outcomes. And 80 years later, this is what's happened. And this will be my last point. Here's the evolutionary description of what's happening right now. Science is moving at warp speed, beyond anything that anyone could imagine, which in the Star Trek analogies is several times the speed of light, and accelerating, accelerating, and accelerating. What we call democratic government, how we govern ourselves, how we govern science, how we think about science, how we think about what we want science to do, is not moving at warp speed, it's moving at impulse power. So rather than billions of miles per second, or trillions of miles per second, it's moving at hundreds of thousands of miles per minute. And then we've got the general understanding of science, that is within the general population itself, which sadly is moving at geological speed. So science is moving at warp speed, government is moving at impulse power, and the rest of us, not those of us in this room largely, but everyone else is moving, just kind of moving along like humans have moved along, one generation at a time. So much so that we've reached the point where the general population says, I don't understand what you're doing. I'm afraid of what you're doing. I'm afraid that you might disrupt something. I'm afraid that I don't understand what's a messenger ribonucleic acid vaccination. What the hell are you talking about? And so what's happened to us along the way is that we've developed an evolutionary velocity gap. And we need to figure out how to speak new languages. We need to figure out how to communicate science in new ways. We need to respect the democracy that we're a part of. We need to connect to the people in new ways. We need to communicate in something other than something I mentioned last night, gibberish. Scientists can speak gibberish till the cows come home to each other, while everyone else looks at them and says, I wonder what that means. I wonder where it's going to take us. I wonder what it's going to do to my life, to my family, to my job. And remember what we promised 80 years ago. We promised in that initial Science, the Endless Frontier, that we would deliver economic security, health security, national security. There's a lot of people that think we don't have those at the level that we should, given the investments that we've made. So my plea to all of you that are here is, let's keep the democracy evolving. Let's imagine that nothing is fixed, and let's learn how to translate gibberish into English or other languages so we can help other people understand what we do. Welcome to Phoenix.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. I love the idea of saying that we speak gibberish. It's amazing to me how we can get caught up in that, isn't it? This morning, I was getting in the elevator in the hotel, and I was trying to think of what I was going to say today. You know, there's a board meeting today. There's this opening, and it's been a hard year. It's been a tough year for science and scientists in this country. And I was sort of down, to be honest. And I'm not a down person, I'm an optimist. I got on the elevator this morning, and I got on with a young man who's one of the American Junior Academy of Science students. And in the 25 seconds that we were on that elevator, I asked one question. I said, "What's your project?" And if you could have seen him light up, and he's from Tennessee, and I apologize, I cannot remember your name. He's from Tennessee, and we had a great conversation about just the little 30-second conversation about the science he's doing. And you know, I didn't even catch the punchline because we had to keep on going. But I have to tell you that excitement, that creativity, that potential is the reason why so many of us this past year have been protecting science, strengthening science, even when it's been under attack and been challenged. And so last year, from this stage, at this very moment in time in Boston, we had a conversation about where the world was headed. And it was early days. It was really early days. It was the days before we saw all the devastation to some of our science agencies by DOGE. It was a time before the president's budget request decided it was going to cut science by half. Half. And you know, when I testified in front of the Senate Appropriations Committee this year, what I said was, if we actually made that happen, if we did that, we'd be forfeiting the future. We'd be forfeiting the inheritance that the students from the American Junior Academy of Science deserve, or the undergraduates in this room deserve, or the graduate students in this room deserve, because they are doing that not for scientists. It's not for scientists. It's for the country. It's for the world. As Michael talked about, we have things we have to deliver. We have things we have to deliver, and we've done it for decades and generations. Decades and generations. We're always great about talking about it, but we are extraordinary at doing it. It's the greatest engine of innovation and creativity and well-being that the world's ever known. And y'all are a part of it. We're all a part of it. And so what's happened over this last year? My job here in the next couple minutes is to tell you where we've been and what I think is coming. Where have we been? So over that last year, there were many things that came at the scientific community. And I have to tell you, I was blown away by the students that I met as I traveled the country. Whether I was in Kansas or Tennessee, North Carolina or California, I met students with incredible resilience. They wanted to do the science that they thought was important, not because they wanted funding, not because they wanted an accolade, but because they thought it would deliver for the nation, for the world. And when I see that resilience, when I see that energy that bubbles up in our graduate students, in our undergrads, in our faculties around the country, and in companies around the country, I'm blown away. And so over the course of that year, many groups, many organizations, patient advocates from around the country, scientists from labs, people in grassroots organizations came together and pushed back on those really random, haphazard cuts to science. And what we saw was bipartisan support in Congress for science. Muscle memory kicked in. We remembered that we live in a moment, when you take back all the headlines, we live in a moment when we know more about the universe, this planet, and ourselves than we've ever known before. And that we are on the cusp of even greater things. One of the things that is just wild to me is that we know that there are 2-kilometer-high mountains of ice on Pluto. I can't get over that. I still can't get over that. I can't get over the fact that we know that there's methane dust sprinkled on top of those 2-kilometer-high mountains of ice. I can't get over the fact that there are people who have been cured of sickle cell anemia. I can't get over the fact that there are grandmothers with cystic fibrosis. Those are miracles. Those are miracles created by scientists and the people that support science. It's a miracle to me. And when I had to get in front of appropriators, what I told them is that story starts with an appropriation. It starts with funding. It starts with the ability to do science. And that comes from the support of the American people. And what we found over this last year is that when we create a collective voice, when patients come together, when scientists come together, when communities come together, we actually can push back on attacks on science. But I got to tell you, flat funding isn't an end. It is not an end. In fact, it's nothing really to celebrate. What it is a runway. It gives us a chance now to see what comes next. And I don't know how many of y'all saw the speech by Prime Minister Carney from Canada at the World Economic Forum, but he said something that, he was talking about geopolitics, and he said that we are not in a transition, we're in a rupture. This is a rupture, not a transition. Now look, I don't know much about geopolitics, but what I can tell you about science is it certainly applies. What happened over the course of the last year is a rupture. We're not going back. It's not possible. Too much damage has been done. Too much has changed. There's an entire generation of scientists that have a scar that is not going to go away. But you know, scars can make us tougher. Scars can become almost shields to build resilience. And I, for one, and many others that I've talked to, believe that the next thing to do is to build what comes next. And what does that mean? Over the course of the next year, yeah, we're going to have to fight for that funding and make sure that it stays, because there are a lot of people attacking it. We also have to realize that there are policies that are being put upon the scientific enterprise and the scientific ecosystem that are damaging. Whether it's political interference, whether it's the lack of scientific evidence in policy making. You know, a year ago, I stood up here and I said that RFK Jr. was the wrong person for the job at HHS. I still feel that way. I also know that there are battles yet to be fought. And I know that we can't do it alone. None of this is about one person, none of this is about one organization. It is about the enterprise speaking together. And so here's my admonition to you. We have one of the, we're in a time in our lives that we're going to remember forever. We're going to remember them forever. And I remember when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, I thought, I remember reading Francis Fukuyama, The End of History. I remember thinking, man, I missed it. I missed it. I missed those important times when the future stood on the head of a pin. We had to make a decision about where to go next. Well, we didn't miss it. We're in it. We are in it. We're in the rupture. We are in that rupture. And what does that mean? It means that we have to build what comes next. And it's going to take passion. It's going to take creativity. We need a new burst of creativity. In 1945, when Vannevar Bush talked about the endless frontier, that was a burst of creativity. It's time for another. We are at that rupture. And it's going to take protests. It's going to take politics. It's going to take the ability to not speak gibberish. All of that has got to come together if we're going to fight for the inheritance of the Enlightenment to continue to make our world a better place. If we're going to continue to make sure that technology helps heal disease, if we're going to continue to make sure that the world gets smaller so that we can become colleagues and friends the world over. There are people from 45 nations here at this meeting. 45 nations. Our collaborators, our friends, our colleagues. We recognize that if we're going to cure disease, if we're going to find out what's on Europa, if we're going to see what's under the ice in Ganymede, we're going to have to do that with collaborators around the world. If we're going to find out what the molecular machinery of Alzheimer's is and how we're going to cure it, we're going to do that. And I don't care if the cure comes from Brussels or Beijing or Boston or Phoenix. That doesn't bother me. I will celebrate it. I will celebrate it. But I know that it's going to come a lot later if the United States of America is not investing in science the way that it has over the last 80 years. And so we've got to work together. I'm going to look for you all to help us put that passion to work. Let us work with our colleagues and community. Because look, we are scientists. And Neil Lane said something to me that was really extraordinary. He said, "Sudip, scientists are a lot like people." You know what? Scientists are of our communities. And that's what Neil was getting at. He wants us to be of our communities. When science came under attack, when institutions of higher education came under attack, where was the outcry? Where was the worry? Where was the anger in our communities that surround those institutions? It wasn't there. Where was the outcry from industry? It wasn't there. We have to build those relationships. That is on us. And we have to do it to make sure that science is of high integrity, that we are accountable for that high integrity. We have to do it to make sure that we are communicating science in a way that is humble, that takes into account the things that we don't know for sure. And we have to make sure that people see the passion and the creativity with which we speak, that they understand that we are here for them. We are here for them. And so as we go through this next year, as we go through this meeting, I'm going to ask you to collect the pieces. Collect the pieces that are going to allow you to do whatever it is that is in your wheelhouse. If you can write a letter to your local paper, do that. If you can protest in the streets, do that. If you can be a part of politics without being partisan, do that. We have a lot of work to do to make sure that the country, our communities, and even our families understand the value of this thing that we call science. Because this organization has been around for 178 years. The Enlightenment has been 500 years. Our time since Vannevar Bush has been 80 years. We owe it to the AAAS students. We owe it to the undergrads in this room. We owe it to our communities to ensure that science continues to deliver for everybody. And so thank you all for being here. Thank you all for supporting science. Thank you all for the contributions that you made last year to protect science and the contributions that you're going to make this year to protect science. Thank you all.
Please welcome to the stage AAAS President-elect Marina Picciotto.
Are you hyped up? Science. All right. Thank you, Sudip. I get an incredibly lucky task, and I am going to introduce this year's AAAS President, her address, my friend, Dr. Theresa Maldonado, and I'd like her to invite her to the podium. Theresa is the System-wide Vice President for Research and Innovation at the University of California Office of the President. As the UC System's Chief Research Officer, she leads large-scale initiatives by harnessing the expertise and assets across 10 UC campuses, 3 UC-managed national labs, UC Agriculture and Natural Resources, and UC Health. Theresa champions team science to produce transformative outcomes through research translation, which you've been hearing about, innovation, and policy. So before joining UC in 2020, Theresa was the Dean of Engineering at the University of Texas at El Paso, and her engineering career began at the fabled Bell Labs. She's held faculty and leadership positions at the University of Texas at Arlington, Texas A&M, and the University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley. She also served 2 tours at the National Science Foundation, including 4 years as a division director. She's a first-generation college student, and she's a triple threat from Georgia Tech. Any Georgia Techies out there? Bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in electrical engineering. Her research background is in nonlinear optical devices and materials, electromagnetics, and optical fiber technologies. She's also a registered professional engineer in Texas. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Theresa Maldonado for her AAAS President's Address.
Oh my God. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So, ministers, excellencies, and friends, good evening and welcome to the 2026 AAAS annual meeting. As Sudip said, we have people from 45 different countries represented this week, from every continent except Antarctica. Let me be unequivocal. Science knows no borders. Innovation knows no borders, and we welcome you all here. Thank you. Before I begin tonight, I have several people to thank. First, thank you, Marina, for that very kind introduction, and to my fellow board members who are seated here at the front. You've been tremendous partners and friends over the past 2 years that I've served on the board, and it is just a rich experience. I am particularly excited to pass the baton to Marina after this annual meeting concludes. She's going to be fabulous. And I would be remiss if I did not publicly acknowledge our program committee. And let me tell you, we started 1.5 years ago to develop this program for this meeting. A lot of Zoom meetings. It was such a joy to work alongside each of these wonderful people, and I'd like to recognize them now. There's Lisa Chong, Karen Emery, Jennifer Frazier, Agustin Fuentes, David Gracias, Ernesto Marinero, Kim Montgomery, Ken Perlin, Marina, and Dennis Didier Rousseau, who comes from France. Let me tell you, they took this role very seriously, so I hope you enjoy this meeting. Also, many thanks to our scientific session reviewers, poster judges, and others who have helped make this year's annual meeting possible. Importantly, to the wonderful AAAS meetings team, led by Jamie Stevens. She is amazing, and she's probably floating around. Very warm thanks to Jamie. Also in the AAAS team is Kim Kleiberg, Kathy Arias, Aisha Jibu Noma, Jana Freeman, Jill Perla, and Marty Klock. And to the hundreds of AAAS team members around the world who contribute to this meeting, thank you. Earlier this week, we announced the winners of AAAS's annual awards and prizes, which recognize scientists, engineers, innovators, and public servants for their contributions to science and society. We will be celebrating these exceptional awardees at a separate ceremony. Can I please get a warm round of applause for these winners? Very extraordinary. 2025. What a disruptive year for the scientific community. Finding our footing in a year like that can be difficult, and there's no playbook for how to navigate what we've collectively experienced and continue to experience. But thankfully, the stance of AAAS has been to lead through disruption, an idea that we even took for the title of our annual report, which was issued last month. But what does leading through disruption really mean? I think of it in a way that guides me personally. That is to stay grounded and do your homework. This ethos has served me well throughout my life, and it is serving me well now in this moment every day. So just real quickly, just to give you an idea of my perspective, I grew up in an Air Force family. My father served for 21 years, and I went to 14 schools, kindergarten through 12, including 4 high schools. So I did have to learn how to relocate, pivot, and adapt quite rapidly. As Marina said, I earned a PhD in electrical engineering and registered professional engineer. I take that PE license very seriously, and you'll learn why in a moment. Early on in my career, I learned about both the challenges and opportunities of disruption. I worked at Bell Laboratories in the 1980s. I was there when the Bell system broke up. It was a period of great restructuring and transition. And I had a long career that spans industry, government, and academia. As Marina mentioned, I currently serve as VP for Research and Innovation at a fabulous University of California system with amazing and very committed research leaders from our 10 campuses and our national labs and across the whole system. So I come from a large family, I've lived in different places, I've worked in different settings, and partnering with different people from all over the world. So that's my lens. I'm also guided by my personal principles and values, 2 of which I will share. The first one, as a professional engineer, I hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. That's what we do. This canon is part of our code of ethics as engineers. The second one is an informal piece of advice that has served me so well throughout my research administration career, and this is from a colleague over 20 years ago, and that is, there are 6 sides to every story. Not 2, 6, and it's true when you think about it. It served me so well in many difficult situations. So I'm not quick to judge others or their ideas. I think it's very important to listen and to try to tease out what could be possible for the future. So I'd like to share an example, a story that kind of illustrates some of what I'm talking about. And it's a lesson from outer space. One of my dear friends, former astronaut Dr. Danny Olivas, flew 2 shuttle missions post-Columbia. During his first mission, which was STS-117, which was Atlantis, cameras spotted a hole in the shuttle's thermal protection system. It's only 4 inches by 6 inches. But this hole in the thermal blanket would have led to massive disruption, explosion of the shuttle on re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. So the crew took photos, collected data, and sent all this information back to NASA Control to seek guidance on what to do. In the meantime, Danny and his colleagues continued with their experiments on the shuttle while Mission Control tried to figure out a solution. And they can only use the tools available on the shuttle, right? So after a couple of days, finally the flight surgeon spoke up and asked, "Hey, can you use a stapler?" from the medical kit. And the whole room turned around and looked at him like, what? And after further debate, the team made the decision that the medical stapler was their best option. So Danny was selected to do the spacewalk. And so he had to practice, rehearse for a couple of days with full gear on, big gloves, a stapler, and high temperature pins that were already on the shuttle that he also used to secure this tear. I think of this story, and he succeeded, by the way, because he flew another mission. But look at how tiny that is, 4 inches by 6 inches, but that would have been a catastrophic failure. So think about it, an interdisciplinary team who had to come up with a life or death solution with the tools available to them on the shuttle. It's also an example I use to explain to people who question, what does it really mean to do interdisciplinary team science? And when I tell this story, it clicks. So Danny and his fellow crew remained calm, disciplined in their training, and focused on the task at hand during a perilous situation. And they took an unusual suggestion from the flight surgeon very seriously. Danny's story also speaks to me because the challenges facing science now are substantial. Our scientific enterprise is complex. There is tension between funding basic research versus applied research and larger scale demonstration projects. The urgent need to fund basic science in times of major federal budget deficits, prioritizing the support of ongoing research versus the accelerated scaling of critical and emerging technologies such as AI and quantum information science. Scaling basic science to public value along the technology readiness level, or TRL scale, which I'll talk about in a minute. So we think about commercialization, the policies around the entire landscape with a sharp eye on quality, safety, and risk, and gaps in talent readiness. There is a lot here on the table that we need to think about and consider. However, when I was at the AAAS Caribbean Division's 40th anniversary event in Puerto Rico this past fall, it was amazing, a lot of people, a lot of students. I was asked to describe how I felt about science at that moment, and all I can say is very excited. There is still important research ongoing, and I do remain very excited about the possibilities for the future. When I talk to individual researchers, the excitement comes out on what's being done, just like Sudip and the student in the elevator. I'm excited about the tremendous energy and passion I see here in this audience, from students to early career researchers, and to those of us who have been around for a while. It is a time of uncertainty and disruption, for sure, but it's also a time for us to come together and find direction and ambiguity, uncovering unexplored pathways toward innovation, and remembering that science has never for a moment stopped mattering. The theme of this year's meeting, Science at Scale, can help us understand and embrace this challenge. I selected this theme a year and a half ago to celebrate all of science and to recognize its importance throughout society. But then 2025 happened. So instead, I want to recognize the importance of community engagement and celebrate the taxpayers' trust in us in embracing our work that at times may seem too abstract. But then again, 2025 happened. We were peppered by extraordinary federal actions and some very troubling policy decisions, some of them unanticipated, such that we are scrambling to figure out how to sail on stormy seas. But what did really happen? And how can we move forward as a group of smart, wise people? We are at a moment to examine our own next steps in 2026 as a science community, starting here in Phoenix. I'm going to offer you a couple of examples in my experience that inform how I approach my role here. The first example is the Texas A&M Energy Institute. I launched the Engineering Energy Institute at Texas A&M in 2009. However, it took me 4 years to do it because everyone was comfortable in their own departments. Very strong petroleum engineering, nuclear, electric power, energy efficiency, very strong agriculture program, developing new feedstock for biofuels, et cetera. Everybody was comfortable, go home, thank you very much. We don't need an institute. After doing a lot of homework and having many conversations, the 11 department heads determined on their own that we should create this institute. It took them 4 years to really think about it. And all of them put money on the table, all of them, as well as the dean, and a 4-year commitment of funding. And they wanted me to be the inaugural director. Because I developed so many relationships around the campus and across the A&M system, everyone else wanted to be a part of it too. So the institute is now the Texas A&M Energy Institute, and the word engineering is out of it because everyone is participating. I quickly formed a student-led energy club to get the students engaged. That was not a problem. They were so excited, and they had, a sense of purpose. And we also had a formal master's degree established in energy engineering, and it's going extremely well. Last year, they celebrated the 15th anniversary, and they invited me back since I was the founding director, and that was very special. It's going very strong today. I brought that experience with me to California, where we are facing a climate challenge that also requires quiet persistence and relationship building. Whatever the current rhetoric may be about climate, we don't have a choice in California. California has a complex natural environment that is rich with biodiversity. It is a beautiful state, but it has over 40 million people, and mostly concentrated on the coast. The state is stressed by dense population centers and land management challenges. And we have all sorts of natural climate-related events, including wildfires, atmospheric rivers, and extreme heat that lead to broad-scale disasters, as evidenced by the Palisades and Eaton fires a year ago in LA. These events have cascading impacts such as water access and quality, health issues, and also forced restructuring of the entire insurance industry. Just looking at the 150-year-old UC Lick Observatory near San Jose, it experienced 2 significant weather events in the last 5+ years. In August 2020, the entire state experienced a major lightning storm with over 10,000 lightning strikes recorded. The entire state was on fire, and one of the fires was around the Lick Observatory. Some of the staff members had their homes burned down, but thankfully the telescopes were spared. And we're still dealing with rebuilding from that fire. Then at 3 a.m. Christmas morning 2 months ago, the Lick Observatory suffered a severe wind damage from an atmospheric river with winds clocking at 114 miles an hour. And for the first time ever, there was direct damage to the dome. A 3-ton shutter blew off and hit the adjacent roof, and you can see it there. Nobody got hurt, thankfully, and remember, there are staff living up there. California doesn't have a choice. Whatever the rhetoric is, we don't have a choice. And so we ask ourselves, how can the University of California system help the state? Our entire research leadership in UC State Governmental Relations met with state officials in 2021 by Zoom and asked, what do you care about and how can UC research help? All of us were there on Zoom. And their top wish was to do something about the wildfires and climate change events in general. We were invited to write a single proposal to the governor and for climate action, and we received $185 million under the condition that we also work with the Cal State University system and the private universities and community colleges in California. That was not a problem for us because it's all hands on deck. And these projects are going amazingly well. So we intentionally scaled up efforts to get the evidence into the hands of those who need it, and that's our state policymakers, to connect research and firsthand experience across a range of categories statewide, and to meet communities where they are, including Native American tribes, and listen to what they need. Regardless of the debates on climate, the Lick Observatory alone is a perfect example of why California must focus its attention on climate, and as well as the longitudinal studies of climate on its biodiversity, the well-being of citizens, and the economy of the state. So how do we scale the resources needed to address systems-level challenges such as energy transitions, climate change, and medical innovations for global pandemics, for example? I've been acutely aware of the challenges of and opportunities in responsible innovation. In my work as part of the steering committee for the National Academy of Medicine, the Action Collaborative on Emerging Science, Technology, and Innovation, or ACT-ST. I am working closely as the co-chair of the steering committee with the National Academy of Medicine President Victor Zhao and Biogen CEO Chris Wiebacher. So we have industry, we have academia, we have government, we have philanthropy, we have venture capital, we have all of these folks at the table, nearly 70 people. And we're exploring, including the bioethics and the laws around innovation, and to see how we can do innovation in the medical space in a responsible manner. It's really a defining challenge of this era. Today's breakthroughs, such as AI, gene editing, and platform biotechnologies, and more, are powerful, fast-moving, and globally consequential. ACT-ST starts from the recognition that scientific excellence alone is no longer sufficient. Responsibility for societal impact must be built into how innovation advances. Furthermore, we tend to address ethical and social concerns only after technologies are deployed. ACT-SD, on the other hand, promotes anticipatory assessment of technologies, embedding responsibility, equity, and societal considerations early and iteratively, before pathways are locked in throughout the full innovation life cycle. The most consequential decisions often occur outside the lab through funding choices, commercialization strategies, data governance, and scale-up. ACT-ST reframes responsible innovation as an imperative to be included at every stage of the research and development process, proactively shaping innovation systems that are trustworthy, inclusive, and aligned with public values, thereby demonstrating that responsibility strengthens rather than slows scientific progress. Innovation development is often viewed by the technology readiness level scale, and engineers love this chart. But if you know an entrepreneur, they often talk about the valley of death, which is on the left side of the chart. So you go from basic research to here, usually in academia, and the challenge is trying to find the funding, the facilities, and champions to translate that valley of death. But that's not the whole story. You run into several valleys of death along the way. Investments, trying to test your technologies, scale and manufacturing. There are a lot of challenges here, and we often don't talk about them. And then we need to iterate along the TRL scale. And so you may have, you may get the funding to get over here, and then you try to scale up your prototype, and then you find some challenges. And you have to go back to the drawing board and redesign to address unintended challenges in the technology. And so entrepreneurs have to scale this type of commercialization timeline to get their technologies broadly defined into practice. So that's something to really understand. And at the university, we try to help our faculty and other researchers to navigate this TRL scale. AI is another area where we want to find ways to scale intentionally because the potential impacts on the people around the world are tremendous but uncertain. We need to get this right. When it comes to AI, AAAS has been deeply involved in efforts that address both intentional and unintentional scaling through such AAAS programs as the Science and Technology Fellows, the Center for Scientific Evidence and Public Issues, or the Epicenter, and the Center for Scientific Responsibility and Justice. Since 2023, AAAS has formed a special cohort of AI Science and Technology Fellows. And by the way, this requires money. They advise members of Congress and the executive branch on legislation related to the deployment and responsible use of AI. In California, we implemented a similar program of Science and Technology Fellows many years ago through the California Council for Science and Technology. The CCST CEO, Dr. Julianne McCall, I think is somewhere in the audience, and I hope you get to meet her. She's very inspiring. The Epicenter has been working with the National League of Cities and other longstanding partners to share information with state and local leaders on the economic and environmental impacts of data centers required to scale up AI capacity. Our AAAS Center for Scientific Responsibility and Justice has shared decision tools with local lawmakers on how to apply AI algorithms ethically in law enforcement, housing, and other civic domains. Not surprisingly, the U.S. Federal Food and Drug Administration has been assessing AI tools to streamline medical device innovations. Unraveling the layering of the regulatory environment without compromising safety with AI would be an important hurdle to overcome. So these are just examples of the promise and problems that arise when transformative solutions are pursued. Innovation continues at a relentless pace, but AAAS remains rooted in our understanding of how these dynamics impact communities first and foremost, and leads with this ethical underpinning to hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. But let's be honest, there are plenty of times when the decisions about the future of science and its applications aren't directly in our hands. Scale really means come into play when we need to provide scientific evidence and the realities of risk for decision makers at all levels. This point is especially true even when some of the usual sources of evidence, such as federal agencies, are conducting, funding, and sharing less science. And oh, by the way, the federal agencies have lost many brilliant scientists and engineers, and I miss some of my friends there working in the federal government. Earlier, I mentioned the work of the Epicenter on AI and data centers, which provides the same kind of intentional scaling to share evidence with state and local leaders. It's a model they have followed for other critical issues such as exposure to PFAS or forever chemicals and voting security. AAAS also helped confront a serious example of unintentional scaling last year when the rise of vaccine misinformation collided with an increase in measles outbreaks. That work has been led by Skyline, a nonpartisan free service housed at AAAS, which provides scientific evidence and expert matching to journalists. AAAS has something of an advantage in this area, as many of our programs have been in operation for literally decades. But a year of unprecedented disruption can remind us of how important this work is and what we need to keep working on. Earning trust in the evidence we provide is very important. Building relationships before the crises occur, being intentional about scaling, and preparing for those moments of unintentional scaling. So here in the United States, we are commemorating the 250th anniversary of our country. While the nation's history has had some important moments, I want to focus on the last 80 years of when we built an R&D ecosystem that is the envy of the world. The U.S. innovation ecosystem was built through intentional scaling of federal funding, beginning with Vannevar Bush and his Endless Frontier report in 1945, all the way through the present day, with key moments of breakthrough bipartisan support, such as doubling of the NIH budget from 1998 to 2003. Also in the mix is the Bayh-Dole Act of 1980, which authorized universities and nonprofit entities to retain rights to intellectual property they developed with federal funding. Bayh-Dole has been instrumental in amplifying technology transfer activities at universities from the basic research conducted there. But how is all this work done, and how is it supported? And what about in these interesting times that we are in? How can we learn from our history here? And how can we create a new type of innovation ecosystem that is more flexible, nimble, and resilient? I will share only 2 slides of data to start making my point here. First of all, these set of curves, if you look at the blue line on this graph, it depicts the total funding here from the federal government from 1961 to 2005. This plot includes research of all the entire TRL scale, so basic, applied, and demonstration projects. The orange line depicts defense R&D. The green line depicts health R&D, and the other lines at the bottom reflect the investment in basic research in the physical sciences and other non-health related sciences. So to me, it was important to see this breakdown to see where I need to expend my energy to support basic research. And oh, by the way, defense and health comprise over 70% of the federal funding. A graph like this one gives us an idea of how our current ecosystem is supported and what is prioritized by the federal government over time. Let's specifically take a look at basic research, the TRL 1 through 3, the type of work that's done at universities, for example. What's shown here is very important. The blue line at the top reflects the expenditures in basic research by the federal government. The green line depicts the expenditures by industry, which is equivalent to the federal expenditures today. And look at higher ed, it's only 13% of basic research expenditures. So in light of the disruptions of 2025, the scientific community in the United States, particularly at universities, must rethink how it secures stable funding support for basic research. In 1980, the government's share of support for all basic research was about 70%, while industry share was 15, or under 15. By 2022, those figures had shifted to 40% for basic research from government and 30% from industry, respectively. During this 42-year period, expenditures increased 14-fold from $63 billion to $891 billion, whereas industry investment in research increased nearly six-fold. Thus, U.S. basic research has shifted away from being primarily federally funded toward much heavier reliance on industry, even as total R&D expenditures have grown tremendously. In other words, we do need to reevaluate and recalibrate our relationships with the federal government and our partnership with industry funders for our basic science. I mentioned the Endless Frontier a short moment ago. It is a landmark report completed in 1945 that recommended prioritizing the support of civilian, basic, and applied R&D to build the US economy post-World War II. And it led to the creation of the National Science Foundation in 1950. But 1945 is 81 years ago now. So last February, the Science and Technology Action Committee, or STAC, with AAAS leadership involvement, launched the Vision for American Science and Technology, or VAST. And some of you in this room are on the task force. It provided expansive national recommendations for supporting the investment in the science research enterprise. I was proud to serve as a member. These leaders came from every sector, industry, government, philanthropy, academia, and so on, with different generations of stakeholders. We had from graduate students to former federal agency directors on this task force, and the perspectives were very interesting. What struck me most about the experience was that we were looking beyond just funding science. We were looking at the entire landscape. We were coming up with new ideas about reducing research inefficiencies and building a critical science and technology workforce, tax incentives for industry, and so on. We were envisioning how to scale intentionally and responsibly a more nimble and resilient innovation ecosystem. Thankfully, Congress continues to recognize the importance of thoughtful, sustained R&D support, as evidenced by the recent budget bills. I hope that you all are following this process through the AAAS R&D Budget and Policy Program They have an amazing dashboard online that provides very rich information on the federal budgets and how it's moving along in Congress. The timing for VAST could not be more perfect. But how do we execute? As one task force member stated and typed it in the chat, implementation science is hard, and we do not do it well. So that's our challenge here in this room. Interestingly, the current situation is reminiscent of the 1980s, which was a period of deep reflection on the status of basic and applied research and their important link to economic growth. The decade began with massive inflation and major federal budget deficits. Many companies shifted their manufacturing capacity overseas. Federal funding for basic research was severely strained, and there was a growing gap between the needs of industry for science and engineering talent and a drop in college enrollment in fields including computer science. This sounds kind of familiar. So in response, the White House Science Council drew from leaders from academic and non-academic sectors to form the panel on the health of US colleges and universities. The federal government actually cared about the health of the universities. And they even cared about the equipment infrastructure at the universities, and noticed that it was deferred maintenance, didn't have up-to-date tools. They were actually very concerned. So they formed this panel on the health of US colleges and universities, and it was chaired by someone in industry, David Packard, co-founder of Hewlett-Packard. The panel was charged with undertaking a comprehensive study of the overall health of the universities in the United States. And they issued a report to Congress entitled A Renewed Partnership, strongly recommending the doubling of federal support for basic research and improving research infrastructure at universities. It also recognized that universities, industry, government, and philanthropy served very important roles in the ecosystem, and strongly recommended new types of alliances between these sectors. As a footnote, back in the early 80s, I was supported by Bell Laboratories through the one-year on-campus program, and they paid for my master's degree. They recruited me with a bachelor's, sent me right back to school. It was an amazing program. We don't see too many of these programs today, so I would challenge industry to invest in the future as well. So this comprehensive analysis of the role of universities brought some changes that drove innovation and US competitiveness. This is when the engineering research centers were launched out of NSF. This is when the Presidential Young Investigator Award was launched at NSF, and so on. But we did not keep the foot on the accelerator over the decades since. We are still discussing the very same issues highlighted in this report. Perhaps we have an opportunity to dust off the recommendations of over 40 years ago and reassess their value in today's setting. We need to explain the value of research on a personal level and answer the question, what's in it for society and for each of us as a taxpayer? After a year like 2025, we must become architects, all of us, of our science and engineering future for outcomes that matter to the public locally and globally. And by the way, I want to make sure I have an ethicist and a science and technology historian as part of the discussion. An important point to highlight in the question of who is participating in the innovation ecosystem and who is not. I actually took a deep dive into this question about 5 years ago. As of 2024, about 75% of all venture-backed unicorn founders were white men, whereas Black founders were less than 1%, that's men and women combined, and Hispanic founders less than 2%. Women founders in aggregate comprised only 1% to 2% of VC funding. Therefore, for the US to continue on its trajectory of innovation, the development of human talent must be revisited and unintended consequences and biases addressed. I've already mentioned the work of AAAS, which calls for intentional scaling of the science and technology workforce. At AAAS, it's the backbone support team of the STEM Opportunity Alliance, a coalition of more than 280 multi-sector partners with the goal of adding 20 million new STEM including medicine, workers in the US by 2050. This alliance will not only expand opportunities into traditionally underserved communities, but it will also ensure that we don't lose out on the talent of young people who are destined to and will change the world for the better. Once more, the preparation we put into this initiative today will bear fruit for generations to come. This reminds me of one more important anniversary we should recognize: the 50th anniversary of the AAAS Double Bind Report, led by Dr. Shirley Malcolm, who is sitting right here in the audience. We get to work with her at AAAS. It's a privilege. She is amazing. She's recognized around the world for her work to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in and benefit from science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine. This groundbreaking report from 1976, still quite relevant today, made clear that systemic barriers experienced by women in science, particularly women of color, remains a challenge. The report also reinforces how much is lost to the global scientific enterprise when we don't find ways to tap into the full potential of talent in the United States and around the world. Finally, I'd like to remind everyone here about the importance of the human scale of science. I am taking this opportunity to mention the most important person in my long career, and that's my PhD advisor, Dr. Tom Gaylord, who is sitting right over here. Dr. Gaylord is Regents Professor and Julius Brown Chair in Electrical and Computer Engineering at Georgia Tech. He's not only brilliant, but he's always embraced and respected every single student in his group. And cohorts of students stay in touch with each other to this day. As you can tell by his wall of fame, and he calls it that, it's in his office. And every PhD student he's had, and I think this is a couple of years behind because I know some others have graduated, every student, their name is remembered, and how they fit into the context of his career, they're memorialized on this wall and not forgotten. I happen to be row 2, number 2. And I was his first female PhD student. He is the most important person in my professional career. Tom recognized my capabilities long before I could see them myself. As you can see, an amazing mentor does not necessarily have to look like you. So my final word to you in the audience, please look around and talk to someone you don't know. Those who are mature in their careers, please talk to one or more of the students who are here. Students, please walk up to people and introduce yourself. You are creating a lifelong network starting here at this meeting, and you cannot imagine the amazing experiences you will have by doing so. Thank you for this opportunity to serve as your AAAS president this past year. It's been an honor beyond imagination. What a privilege, and what a great organization. Thank you.
That was great. That was great. All right, everybody. First of all, just an amazing speech. You can tell why I respect Theresa so much. I'm going to give one more round of applause. All right, it's almost time to go out to the Welcome to Phoenix reception out in the expo hall. But before I do that, I just want to tell you one quick little story. I had to give a speech recently about conspiracy theories, and so I went down a rabbit hole. I learned about the Mandela effect. Have you all heard about this? Yeah, it's this wild conspiracy theory where when they turned on the Large Hadron Collider, that we opened up several parallel universes, and we went down the wrong one. Now, the thing at first I thought, well, this is a great conspiracy, and then I started to think, wait a second, maybe we did. But here's the thing. I think we all have agency. We have incredible agency. The speech you just heard was about agency. We have the agency to do things, to create the world we want to create, to create the scientific enterprise we want to create, and the outcomes that we want for the people of this nation. So as you go out there into the expo hall, decide what you're going to do with the universe that you're going to create. And to give you some inspiration for that, I want to make sure you know about a movie that we're going to be screening this evening. So after the reception, there's a screening of the documentary film Starman. And you get to experience the story of Gentry Lee. He's a legendary NASA engineer and best-selling science fiction author who is with us here in Phoenix. Gentry has dedicated his life's work to answering the question of whether we are alone in the universe, and has definitely been the agent of his own universe. Now, the screening starts tonight at 8 p.m. upstairs here in the Convention Center in room 213. You bring yourself, and we'll bring the popcorn. And then when you're out in that expo hall, make sure you go and see the AAAS posters and go talk to those students. Now, everybody, I invite you to go out into the hall and enjoy the reception. Thank you for being here, and have a great meeting.